welcome to another episode of Dark Prepper Mindsets. Alright, so this is a little bit more provocative than what I've traditionally done in the past with respect to this series. Let me get one thing out of the way very quickly. I think third wave feminism is a movement based on hypocrisy, fueled by a victim mentality. I think it's a joke for the most part. Nevertheless, this is actually a very, very serious matter. And this isn't to say, so with that said, with the feminism stuff, I'm not implying that women cannot take care of themselves. I think women are more than capable, but unfortunately, we live in a society where economic and social class will dictate your survivability. And I'll actually point you out to one study. It was done by a couple of guys in 2007, I believe. A gentleman named Eric Neumayer and another gentleman named Thomas Plumper. I'm not too sure of the pronunciation of that name, but what they basically concluded, and they studied disasters in 141 countries between 1981 to 2002. So 20 years of studying disasters, and they looked specifically at the mortality rate with respect to gender. And what they found was a direct correlation with respect to the social and economic classes of individuals. In some cases, disasters happened in third world countries, and the pre- and post-disaster mortality rate was somewhere in the vicinity of 90% for women where women had died compared to that of men. So there is obviously some very serious gender issues, legitimate gender issues where disasters are concerned and women are concerned. So, and it's a direct correlation with economic and social class. This is to say that if we are in a more of a gender equality type of society, then it's basically the same where mortality is concerned. But we're not talking about death necessarily. We're thinking, or at least I'm thinking about the bigger picture in terms of what's going to happen to women. So women as slaves or women as sexually objectified objects will unfortunately become a reality in a post-shtf situation. Let's talk about glimpses that we've seen from a fictitious standpoint. So I did a video recently on AMC's The Walking Dead, and Negan had given one of his generals the opportunity to sleep with a specific girl.
Since you're doing such an awesome job, you want to have a little blast from the past with you-know-who?
So he essentially had control over women within his group or his gang. So what we can see, or at least what I can envision long term, unfortunately, is a situation where women will become objects of sexuality with certain gangs. They'll be slaves in some respects. There's a movie called The Road. If you're into preparedness, it's exceptionally well done, and it raises a moral or ethical dilemma with respect to one scene. And what happens is the father and the son are going through their paces through the woods, and they come across a gang indirectly. The gang isn't privy to them, and that's because the gang is focused on this woman. There's another movie with Julianne Moore called, let's say, Blindness. This was a great movie. And you can see how the social dynamic, and if you've seen it, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, the social dynamic going to much more primitive type of mentality in this movie, and even in The Road, or The Walking Dead for that matter too, where the one gang leader decides to grab everybody's food rations or split it, sort of a Negan mentality. And then it was jewelry, and then it was woman, and it was woman in exchange for food.
Hola, 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 hola. So, it's been like a week or so, and you people have nothing left to offer. So at War 3, we came up with a new plan. Bring us your women. Women for food. Have a good day.
It's been a few years since I've seen it, but they basically held food ransom in exchange for sexual favors from women, which the woman, being in a desperate state of mind, scarcity mentality, really didn't have much of a choice if she wanted to live. So I want to point you out to one quote that I heard from the National Canadian Press. With respect to the ice storm in Quebec in '98, Quebec and Ontario, a Montreal urban community police chief reported that 1 in 4 calls he had received the past week, and I'm assuming it's the week of the disaster, came from women about abuse. So, and there's a lot more statistics, and I don't want to just read stats to you guys and say, hey, well, hey. But that one particularly surprised me. 1 in 4 with an ice storm. So there's obviously a lot of blackouts, there's medical concerns, there's food concerns, there's water concerns. There's a whole variety of different things that are on the table in terms of desperation from people. Yet, we get 1 in 4 calling about abuse. And it's quite disgusting. I mean, I've seen it over and over and over again, looking at various studies, aftermath of disaster. Katrina's got some exceptionally excellent examples of how horrific things are going to be for women in a post-disaster world. Now, we're dealing with a society that, this is the key thing with that statistic that sort of, whatever that means, that boggles my mind, is Canada's a pretty good country. I mean, we have emergency preparedness plans. We've got a great military. We've got great communities of people. We've got a ton of resources, and we took care of the disaster. Just like we came together as a community and took care of Fort McMurray. We did what we had to do to sustain society to some sort of normalcy. So 98 isn't a long time ago, and there are emergency preparedness management plans in place and people with on-call 24/7 to take care of this. In spite of that, and obviously we recovered, right? In spite of that, we saw a horrific increase in abuse towards women, sexual abuse, physical abuse. Like, to me personally, this is just unacceptable. So I think what I'm trying to allude to is, if this is what's happening in a first world country, Canada, a great country, for a somewhat minor-ish disaster, ice storm, it wasn't cool. I mean, people were out of power for a week or 2 weeks. I'm sure some people much longer. If this is what we're seeing with a disaster like that, what can we anticipate with an electromagnetic pulse or a viral pandemic or something that's a lot more devastating from a disaster perspective? So I think if there are dark preppers out there, some already have it in their mindsets, as I've seen in some of the comments. Maybe I'll put one of the comments in the I'll put it up on the screen right now, and I'll be paraphrasing to some extent, but he basically said he can't wait. This is a disgusting individual as far as I'm concerned. He said he can't wait until it all hits the fan so he can, have his way with women. Like, what kind of sick punk? Like, I want to refrain from swearing because I've been PG-13 for the most part with my videos, but like, wow, what a piece of work. When I hear stuff like this from individuals, I think, preparedness and the good people that are out there should be able to roam free on the web and do what they want, acquire food stores, prepare without being labeled or put on a list somewhere. But then I see, a jackass like this say a comment, and it's like, you know what? maybe it's a good idea that certain individuals that have such a narcissistic, sociopathic personality that are like embracing and waiting for disaster to occur to be flagged somehow. Like it and I'm all against lists and flagging and all stuff like that, but I don't know, I mean, when you see crazy people like that, it's, maybe putting them under the scope to make sure they're not, it's not scripted. So if I pause for a minute, it's because I'm thinking. Maybe I'll do a video on that in the future. We'll leave it at that. So we talked about The Road, Blindness, Walking Dead. I'm sure there's other examples too in other movies. I mean, this isn't it's not uncommon. We see a disaster movie where a woman is being taken advantage of in light of having this sort of scarcity mentality. So I think where the dark prepper mindset comes in is individuals with the preemptive or the motivations now to do it. And this is what scares the heck out of me, is knowing that there are people out there right now thinking, what can I do to acquire? What can I acquire now so that women will come flocking to me? So they may be thinking about things like baby formula, baby medications, diapers, things of that nature that any honest and good and chemically wired, proper, good mother is going to do anything for. And in spite of the fact that they may be a trophy wife, they will have to battle their own ethics and do what they can for their child. And they will give in, unfortunately. I mean, if we're talking about a situation where a mother has a starving baby and the only resolution is to connect with Psycho Prepper 72 down the road because he's got all the baby formula, it's a battle of wits psychologically, but I think you know where I'm going with this. So the unfortunate reality is there are preppers that are probably entertaining this, though they are. We had the one comment from the one individual. They're sick individuals. I think I've been very clear with that. And there's not much I can do as a preparedness individual to help them, I can lead a horse to water. It is sort of the mentality I give with respect to preparedness. Now, we're going a little bit deeper into this and thinking about abuses against women. So the best thing we can do as a community is grow our internal communities. We have these shells as preparedness individuals, and I've said this in the past. We break out of the research mode shell where we actually go out and we learn skills. We break out of the Lone Ranger mentality and realize that there's a tremendous amount of benefits being able to network and connect with other individuals that are into this. Eventually you'll reach a stage where you're going to want to give back. Not because your preps are so hardcore or you're so advanced, but because it's more of a psychological evolution that you'll reach. And I guess that's one objective that I have with respect to this channel, is to raise that awareness and raise the fact that community is going to be important. So where women are concerned, if you're aware of any that you may work with that are in your community that may not have the resources or even have any inclination of what the term prepper means, it might be a good idea to set aside some resources for them from a good moral standpoint and without any expectation of getting anything in return, because you're a good person and you want to give back. That's why. And that's what's going to make the difference between a good prepper that does his preps and a malicious prepper that wants to take advantage of the situation. So you're going to go a step above and not only be a good prepper, but start thinking outside of the box if and when you're ready to do what we can in this community to prevent these sort of travesties from possibly happening. Statistically speaking, women are more prone to abuse. And there's no doubt in my mind, women out there are more than capable of taking care of themselves. I personally are of the standpoint that, there's good women out there. They're hardworking. They're loving. They take care of their man. There's no doubt about it. There's not too many of them. There's a lot of girls out there that... But there is a good portion of women out there that know what it takes to take care of a man physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every respect. So, as a man, and if you're a man that is, an alpha male that wants to do the right thing, you have to think about doing that with a woman, the woman that you're with as well. So it could be taking additional steps or measures from a security standpoint to ensure that she's going to be safe if something happens to you. So I don't want to drag this on too long. I think you guys get the points. And maybe I'll do another video on that in the future. And I was thinking it's going to be a sick world if and when SHTF, where this whole abuse against women comes into play. But in some respects, I think there's a fair argument to say that if there's dark prepper mindset individuals thinking about this now, then I don't know. In some respects, I think it's we've got to fight that stereotype, and it's a shame. I'm at a loss for words. I really am. So maybe flagging these psychopaths is a good idea.